Just to stick to Astrid for a second, because I think this is actually really cuts to the core of why this movie didn't really work for me. And that is that I think this basic idea that we're seeing kind of like the next generation of the Dietzes, like who would be like what kind of person they would produce. I think in principle is interesting. In principle, that the fact that she doesn't get along with her mother, just like Lydia didn't get along with Delia. Like that there are similarities there, but it's also different because they're different people and it's a different time, and all of that on paper is fine, but really nothing about her character I really believe. I don't believe that she is this jaded. I don't believe that she is this that she doesn't believe in ghosts for a second. Beetlejuice ends with Lydia essentially being adopted by ghosts and being raised by ghosts because her parents can't be bothered to actually raise her. Right? That's how that ends, and that is like a happy end. That is like Lydia finally having found her people and their ghosts. And I don't believe for a second that Astrid did not grow up in a world where ghosts were an everyday factor, right? Like that she should have grown up. Like I understand we can't get Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin. They're not available, right? Like we can't get them, right? Not to mention that they shouldn't have aged 40 years and all of that, right? But okay, like for practical reasons we can't have them, right? But she should have grown up around them. Astrid should have grown up around these characters, right? And if not them, then other ghosts. There should be ghosts everywhere. Half her friends should be ghosts.
Yeah.
And especially since she can see them. So this whole story is predicated on Astrid not believing any of this, thinking her mother is a fraud, and holding it against her mother that she has not been talking to the dead father, right? It does not make sense that Astrid sees the world in this way, and that is her personality, and that is that is the nature of why she's estranged from her mother. And then there's the second step, which is the local boy, right? Where I actually think this whole idea that she falls in love with a ghost and then he tricks her because she doesn't understand how the afterlife works. And it kind of continues this idea from the first one about contracts and the ghosts try to exploit the living and all of that, right? I think if that had, like that totally had potential, and if that had been the core of the movie, where she has to go to that rural town and she's bored and she doesn't want to be there and she, just wants to hang out with her friends, whatever. And then she finds this one guy in the entire town that's halfway decent. And then he tricks her into selling her soul. And then Lydia has to team up with Beetlejuice to get her back. And that's where they go on a crazy trip through the afterlife. That should have been the movie. Like just make that the story. And it's much more simple and it's much more focused.
I think of all the ideas that are kind of meshed up in there, I think that's probably the best one that was in there. In terms of her having that doubt and then sort of seeing it.
I actually had an idea for how to fix it. Make Astrid a law student. Very very rational, very down to earth, very rules focused, very structured. And ghosts are normal for her, but she's just not the kind of the creative type. She's not as intuitive as her mother, and that is where the conflict comes from, that they both can see ghosts and they both know ghosts are real and normal, but they don't agree on anything else, right? That they don't have the same interests, they don't have the same temperament, they can't be in the same room with each other, and then they have to in order to solve whatever problem happens in the movie. And that kind of ties back into this, there's one scene at the very end where Astrid points out a flaw in the marriage contract, right? Where Beetlejuice says something like, well, you still signed this marriage contract, we're still married. And she points out some technicality, and then the contract literally goes up in flames.
Very convenient.
And I thought that is cool. Like we've had this whole idea about contracts and rules and structures and this weird, wacky, chaotic afterlife where Astrid at one point says, why is the afterlife so random? But it's actually quite structured, right? Like it's very bureaucratic, there's contracts and whatever. And we've not had a lawyer really in this story, right? Like what if a lawyer starts interacting with these ghosts? And a lawyer who knows the ghosts are real and thinks they're the most normal thing in the world. So I think that's my fix. That's how you fix Astrid.